Yo, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy Zay, the resident Digimon expert here on the TCG Cast channel. And today, I want to do my deck profile of the list, or of the Gabubond list that I took to Nationals. I'm sorry, I'm a little late on this one, I know, but I'm here, and that's all that matters. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Actually, before that, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment on this video and talk and let's have a general discussion about this deck and also why Ice Wall definitely needed to be limited. But yes, without further ado, let's roll this intro. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we are back now, and now let's talk about the deck. So let's go ahead and start off with the eggs. So with the eggs, we play 4 Upamon, the BT1 Upamon, of course. So basically what this card does, for those that don't know, is when attacking, if your opponent has a Digimon with no Digivolution sources in play, you get to draw a card. And definitely in Nationals, this came up a lot of times, especially in the mirror, where I was able to like swing, draw a card since they played a Gabumon or some random random Digimon that had no sources. So this is really good for draw power, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So now we're going to talk about the level 3s that are in this deck, and there's a lot of level 3s, a lot of rookies in this deck. So the first one is Gabumon, fairly enough. So this Gabumon is cool. This is the main Gabumon that you want to have under your bond, mainly because of one big reason, which is inheritable skill. Is if this Digimon is Gabumon Bond of Friendship, you can unsuspend, and later on, well, if you don't know, slight spoiler, Gabubond is able to swing twice initially, but if you have this, we'll be able to swing a third time, and it can do some incredible stuff. Also, this Gabumon has a skill where on all turns, when you play a Tamer with Madashida in its name, you get to gain a memory, and we do play Madashidas in here. There was a couple times during Nats where I was able to play a Madashida for 2 memory, and I was able to memory choke my opponent, so that was a very cool interaction. But besides that, you mainly just want to have the inheritable skill. So the next level 3 is 4 of what we call Drawbu, which essentially is the Gabumon, which on play, you get to draw 1 card. Very nice. Like I mentioned, you know, draw power, very fantastic. In any card game, you know, drawing cards is a fantastic thing. Plus, it's a Gabumon, and our whole deck interacts mainly with Gabumon, so this is really good. So the next one, or the next Gabumon that we play in here, is the EX01 Gabumon, which is actually probably like the MVP in this deck, in my opinion, besides the main attacker Gabumon. But the cool thing about this Gabumon is when attacking once per turn, you get to reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, and you get to add a Tamer card or a Digimon card with Gabumon in its name. So you can add kind of the other Gabumons that we've showcased here. You could also add a Tamer. We'll get to those in a little bit. You can also grab Gabubond itself, because the name is Gabumon Bond of Friendship, so it's a Gabumon, and that's really amazing. Now the next Gabumon is the promo Gabumon. So what this card does is on play, you get to reveal the top 5 cards of your deck and add 1 Tamer from among them, and then you add it to your hand, and then that's pretty much it. So this card it's okay. It's a Gabumon, so that's mainly why it's in here. If I was able to put like 5 of this card in my deck, I would definitely do that to replace these 2, but We do need a secondary way to find our Tamers, so this is a very good card. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. So that's all the Gabumons. Now we're gonna get into the rookies that are kind of like the tech options. So the first one is Madoki Betamon. This card was very good in the mirror match and very good against Lilith Loop to a degree. So Madoki Betamon, what it does, on all turns, your opponent can't gain memory except with Tamer effects. So yes, they're able to gain memory with their memory resetters, but they can't, like, your opponent can't hammer spark. They can't gain memory if they do the Ginkaku promote play, and just kind of stuff like that. So this was a very good card. Definitely helped me out a lot during my matches with against Gabubond. Now with purple, it was kind of iffy because Lady Devimon can kill level 3s, so that's a thing. Now the last level 3 that's in this deck is Strawbeyone. This card, very kind of iffy about. So basically what it does, on play, you get to reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, and you get to add one Digimon card with hybrid in its form, and or a blue Tamer card. So you could potentially +2 with this card. Now the main problem with this though is that this isn't a very this is kind of a Tamer heavy deck, so to speak, but it's not a hybrid Tamer or a hybrid heavy deck. So there's a good chance that you might whiff, and there's also a good chance where you might just +1. But when you do +2 with this is very good. So that's kind of the risk and reward of playing this card in this deck. Now we're going to get into the level 4s of this deck. So the first one that we play is Lobomon, which is basically just a blue hybrid that you could digivolve on top of your Tamer as if it's a level 3 Digimon. And I'll tell you, whenever somebody says Lobo GG, that you know that you're going in for the kill, essentially. This is a pretty good card. Also, you could definitely digivolve it on top of your EX01 Gabumon, and swing, kind of use that to get some of your pieces that you're missing. So it's a very universal card in this deck. Now the next level 4 is also a hybrid, and it is 2 Kendo Gurumon. This card is really good because, like I mentioned, it's also a hybrid, so you can digivolve it on top of your Tamer. Sadly, the difference between Kendo and Lobo is that Kendo is a 3 to digivolve and Lobo is a 2. But with Kendo, it has a when attacking effect of you get to return one of your opponent's level 3 Digimon to its owner's hand. So mainly like in the mirror match, if you swing, you can bounce back one of your opponent's Gabumons or a Madoki Betamon, or just any pesky level 3 Digimon that could potentially harm you in your opponent's next turn. So this card is very good. Very good. Now the next level 4 in this deck is probably one of the MVPs in this deck, in my opinion. And it is Ikakumon from EX01. Mainly because it has a skill where on your turn, this Digimon can also attack your opponent's unsuspended Digimon with no Digivolution sources. So, and I know I've mentioned this a bunch of times, but in the mirror match, like if they play like a Gabumon or a Madoki Betamon, you can swing into it, get rid of it, and then now your opponent has less bodies on the board. And the cool play that I like to do with this is to have the EX01 Gabumon under it, swing into one of my opponent's Digimon, look at the top 3, get either a Tamer or a Digimon, and then just go off from there. And that is the main reason I like this card. Now the next card, in hindsight, I probably would have cut for a different cards, but it's still a pretty decent card in this deck, in my opinion. It is 2 Grizzlymons. Now, the thing that this deck lacks is blocking. Well, generally it lacks blocking. So that's why I mainly put this card in here. You can also still swing with this, but you'd have to lose 2 memory. But in the mirror match, if your opponent goes into bond, it's going to get bottom decked. But we can use this to stall to get into our own bond, and then just kind of go off from there. So that's why I put this in this deck. And the last level 4 that I have is one Octomon. So Octomon, if I could go back in time, I would probably add probably 2 of this Octomon and maybe 1 Grizzlymon. But this card is great because it is a level 4 that is a 7k body. And in the mirror match, there is a lot of things that or there's a lot of Digimon that you can swing over and then not have to worry about. Or you could just swing at your opponent's security, and then if it's like and you'll probably just run into like a Gabumon, or maybe even like a Hammer Spark or something, and then they can't really do anything about it. So that is pretty good. Now we're gonna get into the big boss man himself, Gabubond. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this card is insane. So it's insane for multiple reasons. The first one is when attacking once per turn, if you have a Tamer in play, you get to unsuspend this Digimon. So that means we get to attack twice with this. Now the second reason why this card is ridiculous is because when attacking and not once per turn, you get to return one of your opponent's level 5 or lower Digimon to the bottom of his deck. That is insane. So you're telling me I can swing twice, bottom deck 2 of my opponent's level 5 or lower, or if I have the Gabumon, which we've discussed earlier, that lets it unsuspend again, you get to swing 3 times, bottom deck 3 things, and then just go ham afterwards. Oh, yes, I love it. Absolutely love it. Sign me up. 10 out of 10. Would do it again. Alright, so that's pretty much all the Digimon in this deck. So now we're going to get into the Tamers. And the main Tamer that you play in this deck is Matt Ashita. So Matt Ashita is great because on your turn, when one of your Digimon with Gabumon or Garurumon in its name moves from the breeding to the battle area, you get to gain a memory and draw a card. So this is basically kind of like a built-in Drawboo if you have Gabumon in your raising area. So that's fantastic. Also, main once per turn, Digivolve your Gabumon into 1 Gabumon Bond of Friendship into your hand for its Digivolution cost, ignoring its level, and then if you do, you trash the top 2 cards of your security stack. Then if you have one or more security, you have to delete that Digimon at the end of your turn. So you can, so with the Gabumon play, you can go into it early, but I would suggest not to. Also, this is the only way to go into bond from a Gabumon to a Gabumon, so you have to have this on the field. If you don't, you are going to suffer or potentially lose the game. So that's kind of the biggest stipulation with this. Now the next Tamer we play is 2 Davis, Motomiya. This card is great because it is a memory resetter, so if your memory's at 2 or less, you get to go back to 3, so that's fantastic. And then on play, you get to reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, and then add 1 blue and 1 green Digimon among them to your hand, and then you have to place everything else to the bottom of the deck. Now, we don't play green in this deck, but we do play a lot of blue Digimon. So you can basically get almost anything you want, unless if you hit into like some option cards or some more Tamers. But generally, like 9 times out of 10, you'll hit into a Digimon with this, so you should be 100% fine. If anything, I think in hindsight, I probably would have cut this, or I probably would have bumped this up to 3. But yeah. So the next and last Tamer that we play in this deck is 2 Mimi Tachikawa. So this is something that I saw in the European nationals that I thought was insanely good. So on all turns, when a player uses an option card, you may suspend this tamer to gain a memory. This is so good in the mirror match. If your opponent tries to like hammer spark to like go to 1, you can like tap this and be like, you're going back to 0. Or if you have 2 on the field and they try to hammer spark, you can tap 2 to go back to your turn. And then if you have Davis, you can just go back to 3. That is insane. Or if they try to memory choke you with a ice wall or something, you can tap it to gain another memory. So now you can potentially swing twice for a game, potentially. Alright, so that's pretty much all the Tamers in this deck. So let's get into the option cards. And let's talk about everybody's favorite option card, Ice Wall. Yes, I know we've criticized Ice Wall a lot in this channel. But I personally feel like that even though as much as I still think this card is a meh card, I still think it's still kind of too good to not put in a deck. So why is this card so good? Because for 1 memory, all your opponent's Digimon gain when attacking lose 2 memory until the end of your next turn. Now this has a blanketed effect where it is one of the few cards that affects Digimon in the raising area. Meaning, if you have a Digimon in the raising area and then you push up, that also gains the lose 2 memory skill, which is why this card is absolutely busted. So it's really good for defense. Also, not to mention that it has a security effect of gain 2 memory. So it's basically like a hammer spark in security, which can't go wrong with that. The next option card we play is 3 Hammer Spark. It's pretty simple. For 0 memory, you get to gain a memory. Also in security, you gain 2. But the cool thing about this, though, in this deck specifically, if we have Mimi, we get to tap it to gain a memory. So we can gain 2, essentially, which is actually pretty busted. Now, the next set of cards are kind of more of the next set of option cards are kind of like our defensive options. So we have Howling Memory Boost. This card is fantastic, and honestly, if I could put one more in here, I definitely would, because for 3 memory, you get to trash 2 of your opponent's Digivolution cards from the bottom of one of your opponent's Digimon. Then one of your opponent's Digimon with no Digivolution sources can't attack or block until the end of your opponent's next turn. So if you're like going to Bond per se, and like your opponent plays what's the card? Craniumon. You can freeze the Craniumon essentially and then just swing for game because they can't block, which is fantastic. Or if you're playing against the mirror match, you can just freeze one of your opponents like Octomon or Ikakumon so they can't utilize their Digimon essentially. And also, let me not forget the juicy part. It has the delay effect where you play it, you do the main effect, and you keep it in your battle area, and then you can send this to your trash to gain 2 memory. So that is amazing. It can help us extend our plays and do a bunch of other stuff. Now the last 2 cards that I played in this deck was Absolute Blast. I know a lot of people played what's that card? I can't remember what the card is called. Kakaida's Breath. Yes, that's the card. I know they played they played Kakaida's Breath, but I feel like Absolute Blast was better, mainly because, so what this card does is you trash the bottom Digivolution card of one of your opponent's Digimon, then you return one of your opponent's Digimon with no Digivolution sources to the bottom of the deck. This card was very good when I played against Security Control. When my opponent just hard played a Craniumon, I was able to play this for 6, bottom deck the Craniumon, and then essentially kind of swing for game afterwards. This was also pretty good against the mirror match, where I was able to bottom deck my opponent's Octomon, if I remember correctly. It's a pretty good card. Now I know with Kakaitis Breath you're able to essentially put a annoying Digimon back to your opponent's hand, but I personally don't like putting my or giving my card or giving my opponent back cards. I would rather just bottom deck it so we won't have to see it for the rest of the game potentially. But that's just my opinion. And that's pretty much the deck, ladies and gentlemen. This is what I took to Nationals. Sadly, I went 2-4 during that tournament. But besides besides that, this is still a really good deck. A really good deck to take to your locals. And it definitely has a high win percentage outside of my experience with it. So yeah, I hope you guys liked the deck profile. Like I mentioned before, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts about the deck. And I hope you guys have a great one. I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.